I never thought my life would turn into a nightmare on an ordinary evening. Before I continue, let me say this. If you love emotional, powerful stories like this, please take a second to subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories that touch the heart and shake the soul. And please, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know I'm not alone in this. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you still makes my hands shake. I was standing in my own house. The house I helped build. The house I cleaned every day. The house I believed was safe. And that was the moment I walked in on my husband and my best friend. Not rumors. Not text messages. Not whispers from neighbors. I saw them. Right there. On the couch I picked. Under the roof I trusted. For a second, my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. I just stood there, frozen, holding my purse, my heart pounding so loudly I thought they could hear it. My husband jumped up like a guilty child. My best friend screamed my name like it was an accident, like she had tripped and fallen into his arms by mistake. "I can explain," he said. Those words. Those useless, lying words. My best friend started crying. She covered herself and kept saying, "Please, please, don't misunderstand." But how could I misunderstand what was right in front of me? That moment shattered me. But here's what they didn't know. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I didn't collapse to the floor. I smiled. Yes, I smiled. Something inside me broke, and something else was born. A calm. Dangerous calm. Because right there, as they stood shaking in fear, I made a decision that would ruin them both. They thought I was weak. They thought I would beg. They thought I would forgive. They had no idea what I was about to do. And that is where the real story begins. Let me take you back, because to understand how everything exploded, you need to know how it all started. I was not always this quiet woman with tired eyes. Once, I was full of life. I believed in love. I believed in loyalty. I believed that a best friend was forever and a marriage was sacred. My husband and I had been married for many years. We didn't have a perfect marriage, but I thought we had a real one. We shared bills, memories, laughter, and pain. I stood by him when he struggled. I defended him when people talked. I trusted him with my whole heart. And my best friend, she was like a sister. We shared secrets. We laughed together. She cried on my shoulder when life hurt her. I welcomed her into my home without fear. I never locked my doors against her. I never watched my back around her. That was my biggest mistake. Looking back now, there were signs. Small signs. Little things I ignored because I didn't want to believe something was wrong. The long phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. The strange looks. The silence that felt heavy. The way she praised my husband a little too much. The way he defended her too quickly. But love can make you blind. Trust can make you foolish. The day it happened, I had come home earlier than usual. I wasn't supposed to be there. I even thought about sending a message to say I was on my way, but something told me not to. That feeling, that quiet warning in my chest. I opened the door slowly. The house was too quiet. No TV. No music. Just silence. I took a few steps inside, calling his name softly. No answer. Then I heard a sound from the living room. Laughter. Her laughter. That was when my heart dropped. I walked forward, each step heavier than the last. My mind still tried to protect me, telling me I was overthinking. Telling me it was nothing. But when I turned the corner, my life ended as I knew it. And yet, that was only the beginning. Because what I did next was not loud. It was not fast. It was patient. And it was devastating. They thought they had destroyed me. But they had no idea I was already planning something they would never recover from. And just when I turned to leave the room, hiding my smile, I heard my husband say something that made my blood turn cold. Something that changed everything. I did not say a word when I heard his voice behind me. Instead, I paused. My hand was already on the door, but his next sentence froze me in place. "She will never leave," he said in a low voice. "She doesn't have the strength." I felt my chest tighten. My best friend laughed softly. Not nervous. Not guilty. Confident. "She worships you," she replied. "And she trusts me. We're safe." Safe. That word cut deeper than any knife. I stood there, my back to them, breathing slowly so they would not hear my pain. In that moment, I understood something very important. This was not a mistake. This was not a moment of weakness. This was a plan. A long one. They had been lying to me for a long time. I turned around slowly and looked at them again. My husband tried to read my face. My best friend wiped her tears and forced a weak smile, as if she could charm her way out of this. "I'm tired," I said calmly. My voice shocked even me. "I'm going out for some air." They stared at me, confused. "You're leaving?" my husband asked. "Yes," I said simply. "We'll talk later." I walked out of the house without another word. The moment I closed the door behind me, my legs almost gave out. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. But I refused to cry. Not yet. That night, I did not go to a friend's house. I did not call anyone. I drove aimlessly until I found a small, quiet place to sit. I stayed there for hours, staring into the darkness, replaying everything in my mind. The laughter. The couch. The confidence in their voices. They thought I was weak. That mistake would cost them everything. The next morning, I returned home like nothing had happened. I cooked breakfast. I smiled. I asked my husband how he slept. I hugged my best friend when she came over later that day, pretending she was worried about me. "Oh my God," she said softly. "I didn't sleep all night. I was so scared you'd hate me." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Why would I hate you?" I asked gently. Relief washed over her face. She took my hands, squeezing them like she was grateful. That was when I knew. I had them exactly where I wanted them. Days passed. Then weeks. On the outside, everything looked normal. But inside, I was changing. I was watching, listening, learning. I noticed how my husband suddenly became careless. He left his phone unlocked. He stopped hiding his late nights. He believed I was broken, confused, and afraid to face the truth. My best friend became bold. She started acting like she owned my house. She criticized my cooking. She corrected me in front of others. Sometimes, she even sat closer to my husband than necessary. And each time I smiled. At night, while they slept peacefully, I planned. I went through old documents, bank papers, emails. I remembered every sacrifice I had ever made for my marriage. I remembered whose name was on what, who signed which papers, who trusted whom. And slowly, a plan began to form. One evening, I made a simple suggestion. "I think we should all go on a small trip together," I said casually during dinner. "Just to relax. We've all been so stressed." My husband raised his eyebrows. My best friend's eyes lit up. "That's actually a great idea," she said quickly. Of course it was. The trip was booked. A quiet place. Isolated. Peaceful. Perfect. As the days got closer, I could feel the tension growing. My husband became nervous. My best friend became excited. Neither of them realized the truth. This trip was not for healing. It was for exposure. The night before we left, I overheard them whispering again. They thought I was asleep. "She's really over it," my husband said. "I told you she wouldn't do anything." "I almost feel bad," my best friend replied. Almost. I smiled in the darkness. Because by then, I had already spoken to a lawyer. I had already copied files. I had already recorded conversations. I had already made sure the truth would come out in a way they could never escape. The trip began calmly. Laughter. Fake smiles. Fake kindness. But on the second night, something unexpected happened. Someone else showed up. Someone who knew the truth. Someone who should never have been there. When I saw them standing at the doorway, my heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from surprise. My husband went pale. My best friend dropped her bag. And that was when I realized. This story was about to turn darker than I had planned. The room went silent. No music. No laughter. No pretending. Just the sound of heavy breathing and a truth that could no longer be hidden. The person standing at the doorway looked straight at my husband first. Then slowly, their eyes moved to my best friend. There was no smile on their face. No anger either. Just a calm, dangerous calm. One I knew very well because I had been wearing it myself for weeks. My husband swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice shaking. That was when I finally spoke. "I invited them," I said quietly. Both of them turned to look at me like they were seeing a ghost. My best friend's lips trembled. You invited them?" "Yes," I replied. "I thought it was time." "Time for what?" I didn't answer. "Not yet." The person stepped inside and closed the door behind them. The sound echoed through the room like a warning bell. My husband took a step back. My best friend clutched her bag like it could protect her. "Relax," I said calmly. "We're all friends here, aren't we?" No one laughed. We sat down in the living room, but the air was heavy, thick, hard to breathe. I poured drinks with steady hands while my heart beat fast in my chest. This was the moment everything began to shift. The person I invited spoke first. "I didn't plan to come," they said slowly. But when I was told what was really happening, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. My husband shook his head. "This is a misunderstanding." I smiled again. That same smile that had fooled them for weeks. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated. "Is that what you call lying to your wife and sleeping with her best friend?" My best friend burst into tears. Loud, dramatic tears. "It just happened," she cried. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I leaned forward. "You planned it. You laughed about it. You called me weak." Her crying stopped. My husband stared at me. "You heard that?" "Oh, I heard many things," I replied. The person I invited pulled out their phone. "I heard things too," they said. The room froze. They pressed play. A voice filled the room. Clear. Familiar. My husband's voice. Laughing. Joking. Making promises. My best friend's voice answered him, sweet and confident. My husband jumped to his feet. "Turn that off." "No," I said firmly. "Sit down." For the first time in years, he listened. The recording played on. Every word felt like poison spilling into the room. Every sentence exposed how little they respected me. How safe they felt betraying me. My best friend covered her face. My husband's hands trembled. "This isn't fair," he whispered. I laughed softly. "Neither was what you did." But that was only the beginning. After the recording stopped, I stood up and walked to my bag. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. "What's that?" my husband asked. "Everything," I replied. "Bank statements, emails, messages, screenshots, proof." I slid the papers toward him. "You didn't even notice when I stopped trusting you. You were too busy thinking I was weak." He flipped through the pages, his face turning pale. "You went through my things?" he asked. "I protected myself," I corrected. The person I invited spoke again. "And that's not all." They looked straight at my best friend. "You told me you were just helping her marriage," they said. "You said you were being supportive." My best friend looked up slowly. You lied to me, the person continued. You used me to cover your secrets. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That was when the shouting started. Accusations. Excuses. Lies piled on top of lies. My husband blamed my best friend. My best friend blamed my husband. They both blamed stress, loneliness, mistakes. I said nothing. I let them destroy each other. Finally, my husband turned to me, desperate. What do you want? He asked. Tell me what you want. I looked at him carefully. I want the truth, I said. Out loud. Right now. He hesitated. I leaned closer. If you don't say it, I will. He broke. He confessed. Everything. How long it had been going on. How they hid it. How they thought I would never leave. How they planned to continue. Each word felt like fire, but also freedom. When he finished, the room was silent again. My best friend whispered, I never meant to lose you. I stood up. You lost me the moment you chose him, I said. But you haven't lost everything yet. They both looked at me. And that's when I delivered the next blow. Tomorrow, I said calmly, everyone will know. My husband's eyes widened. You wouldn't. I already have, I replied. They stared at me in shock. I smiled one last time and added, this trip wasn't for healing. It was for witnesses. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. A loud one. My heart skipped, not with fear, but with anticipation. Because I knew exactly who was standing on the other side. And once that door opened, there would be no turning back. The knock came again. Loud. Slow. Heavy. Each knock felt like a countdown. My husband looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. My best friend's face drained of color. Neither of them moved. They were too afraid to breathe, too afraid to ask the one question burning in their minds. Who is that? My husband whispered. I didn't answer. I walked calmly toward the door. My steps were steady, even though my heart was racing. I knew this moment would change everything. Once that door opened, there would be no more pretending, no more hiding, no more lies whispered in dark rooms. I opened the door. Two people stood there. One was someone my husband never expected to see again. The other was someone my best friend had begged never to be involved. Their eyes moved past me and into the room. The silence was painful. My husband's knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. You, he said, barely able to speak. The first person stepped inside slowly. Yes. Me. My best friend covered her mouth with her hands. Her eyes filled with tears, not the fake kind this time. These were real. Fear-filled. I told you, the person said, looking straight at her. I told you this would come back to you. I closed the door behind them. Please, my husband said quickly. Let's talk about this calmly. The second person laughed softly. You lost the right to calm a long time ago. We all sat down again, but this time, the balance of power had changed. I was no longer alone. I was no longer the quiet wife who looked away. I was no longer the woman they thought they could fool. I was in control. The first visitor turned to me. Are you sure you want to do this now? I nodded. I've waited long enough. They turned to my husband. You told her you were working late, they said. You told her you were tired. But you told me something else. My husband shook his head. That's not fair. What's not fair, the person replied sharply, is using people like tools and throwing them away when you're done. My best friend began to cry again. I never wanted it to go this far. That's a lie, I said quietly. You enjoyed every minute of it. She looked at me, shocked by my cold tone. The second visitor pulled out a folder, thicker than mine, and placed it on the table. Photos. Messages. Dates. Times, they said. Everything. My husband stared at the folder like it was a weapon. You've been busy, I added. Much busier than I ever knew. My husband suddenly stood up. Enough. This has gone too far. No, I said firmly. This hasn't gone far enough. I stood as well. For years, I continued, I supported you. I believed in you. I defended you when others warned me. And while I was doing that, you were laughing at me behind my back. I turned to my best friend. And you, I said, my voice trembling just a little now. You sat at my table. You hugged me. You called me sister. And then you climbed into my bed. She collapsed into the chair, sobbing. I loved him, she cried. I shook my head. No. You loved what was mine. The first visitor spoke again. There's something else you should know. Everyone turned. They weren't just planning to continue, the person said. They were planning to push you out. My breath caught. What do you mean? I asked. They talked about money, the visitor continued. About convincing you to leave. About making you look unstable. The room spun. My husband shouted. That's not true. Then explain the messages, the second visitor said, sliding their phone across the table. I picked it up with shaking hands. There it was. Words that destroyed what little hope I had left. Plans. Lies. Mockery. My best friend whispered. I didn't think she'd see those. I laughed bitterly. You never thought I'd see anything. Something inside me finally broke, but not in the way they expected. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I became calm. Dangerously calm. Thank you, I said to the visitors. You've done more than enough. They nodded, understanding. My husband rushed toward me. We can fix this. Please. I'll do anything. I stepped back. Anything? I asked. Yes, he said desperately. I looked him straight in the eyes. Then listen carefully, I said. Because starting tomorrow, your life as you know it ends. His face twisted in fear. I turned to my best friend. And yours ends tonight. She gasped. What do you mean? I picked up my phone and pressed a button. A message sent. Delivered. Read. Somewhere far away, someone else was already reacting to the truth. I looked at them both and said softly, You thought walking into that room broke me. I smiled. It only woke me up. At that exact moment, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. And when I saw who was calling, even I wasn't ready for what was coming next. My phone kept ringing. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the heavy silence in the room. Everyone stared at it like it was a bomb about to explode. My husband's eyes were wide with fear. My best friend stopped crying and just watched me, her lips shaking. I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to feel it. That waiting. That fear of not knowing. Finally, I picked up the phone. Hello, I said calmly. The voice on the other end was steady, serious, and very clear. It's done. That was all they said. I closed my eyes for a brief moment and took a slow breath. When I opened them again, I felt different. Lighter. Stronger. Thank you, I replied and ended the call. My husband jumped to his feet. What's done? He demanded. What did you do? I placed my phone gently on the table. I told you, I said softly. Your life as you know it ends. My best friend shook her head wildly. You're scaring me. Please. This has gone too far. I laughed, a quiet laugh, not filled with joy, but with clarity. No, I said. What went too far was you lying to my face for years. I walked toward the window and looked outside. The night was calm. Too calm for what was happening inside that house. Do you remember, I continued, how you both used to talk about me when you thought I wasn't listening? They said nothing. You called me boring, I said. Predictable. Easy to control. My husband whispered. We were just talking. No, I replied sharply. You were planning. I turned back to them. Do you know why I stayed quiet all those weeks? I asked. Why I smiled. Why I acted like nothing happened. They stared at me, speechless. Because I needed proof, I said. And you gave it to me freely. I picked up the folder again and opened it. Inside were copies of messages, bank transfers, and agreements my husband never thought I would find. You see, I continued, while you were busy betraying me, I was learning. My husband sat down slowly, his face pale. You went behind my back. I nodded. Just like you went behind mine. My best friend stood up suddenly and fell to her knees in front of me. I'm sorry, she cried. I swear I never wanted to hurt you. Please don't destroy us. I looked down at her. You didn't ask for forgiveness when you thought I was weak, I said. You only want it now because you're afraid. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. That night, I continued, when I walked in on you both, something inside me changed forever. I stopped being the woman who needed approval. The room was silent again. Then my husband spoke in a broken voice. Tell me what you want. Money. The house. I'll give you anything. I smiled slowly. You already gave me what I needed, I said. I picked up my phone again and turned the screen toward them. On it was a message thread. My husband gasped. That's my workplace. Yes, I said. They were very interested in those recordings. My best friend screamed. You wouldn't do that. I already did, I replied calmly. My husband grabbed his head with both hands. I'll lose everything. I leaned closer. That's what betrayal costs. Suddenly, there was another knock at the door. This time, it wasn't slow. It was urgent. My heart beat faster, not with fear, but with anticipation. My husband whispered, Please, don't open it. I walked past him and placed my hand on the door handle. Too late, I said. I opened the door. Standing there was someone neither of them expected to see that night. Someone who held even more power over their future. My husband let out a broken sound. My best friend collapsed back into the chair. And I realized something important in that moment. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about justice. And it was only getting worse for them. The person standing at the door did not rush inside. They stood there calmly, like they had all the time in the world. That calm was terrifying. My husband took one slow step backward. My best friend's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The color drained from her face as if she had just seen her future, and didn't like what it showed. Good evening, the visitor said politely. I stepped aside. Please, come in. The door closed behind them with a soft click. That sound was louder than any scream. I didn't expect to see you here, my husband said, forcing a weak smile. The visitor looked around the room, then back at him. I didn't expect to be invited either. But when certain information reaches my desk, I don't ignore it. My husband swallowed hard. My best friend began shaking. This is a mistake. The visitor turned to her. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was a choice. Silence fell again. I sat down slowly and crossed my legs. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt completely steady. Please, my husband said, his voice cracking. We can explain. The visitor nodded. You will. But first, I need to confirm something. They turned to me. Are you ready for this? I met their eyes. I've been ready for weeks. They pulled out a document and placed it on the table. Over the past several months, the visitor said, we've received multiple reports. Financial irregularities. Abuse of trust. Workplace misconduct. My husband shot to his feet. This has nothing to do with my marriage. It has everything to do with your character, the visitor replied calmly. My best friend started crying again. Real crying this time. Loud. Broken. I didn't know, she sobbed. I swear I didn't know. I looked at her. You knew enough. The visitor continued. There are recordings. Messages. Witnesses. They looked directly at my husband. Including your wife. My husband turned to me, disbelief written all over his face. You did this, he whispered. I nodded. You forced me to. No, I corrected myself. You taught me how. He fell back into his chair. I trusted you, he said weakly. I leaned forward. So did I. The visitor gathered the papers again. This is not an arrest, they said. Not yet. But it is a formal notice. You are suspended effective immediately. My husband let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. It's over, he whispered. The visitor turned to my best friend next. And you, they said, are not as invisible as you think. Your name appears more than once. Her head snapped up. I didn't sign anything. You benefited, the visitor replied. And you helped cover it up. She shook her head wildly. I was in love. I stood up slowly. You weren't in love, I said. You were greedy. The visitor placed the final paper on the table. You will both be contacted soon. Until then, I suggest you don't leave town. They turned to me again. If you need anything, you have my number. Thank you, I said sincerely. When the visitor left, the house felt empty. Hollow. My husband stared at the wall like his soul had left his body. My best friend slid down the chair and sat on the floor, hugging her knees. This isn't how it was supposed to end, she whispered. I walked to the center of the room. Oh, I said quietly. This isn't the end. They both looked up at me. This, I continued, is just the part where you realize I'm no longer afraid. My husband shook his head slowly. I don't even know who you are anymore. I smiled sadly. Neither do I. But I like her. I picked up my bag. Where are you going? He asked. I paused at the door. I'm going to sleep peacefully for the first time in a long time, I said. You should try it. Though I doubt you will. As I opened the door, my best friend whispered my name. Please, she said. Don't leave me like this. I turned around one last time. You left me a long time ago, I replied. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. As I walked away, my phone vibrated in my hand. A new message. Short. Clear. Tomorrow, everything goes public. I stopped walking. Because suddenly, I realized something terrifying. What I planned to expose next wouldn't just ruin them. It would destroy an entire circle of people who thought they were untouchable. And once I released it, there would be no hiding for anyone. I didn't sleep that night. No matter how hard I tried, my mind refused to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Shocked. Broken. Afraid. The same fear I had carried alone for weeks was finally sitting on their shoulders. But sleep wasn't coming. So I sat by the window, watching the sky slowly change color, waiting for morning. When the sun finally rose, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Are you sure you want to release everything today? I stared at the screen for a long time. Was I sure? I thought of the years I had spent loving someone who laughed at me behind my back. I thought of the friend who hugged me while planning to destroy my life. I thought of the whispers, the lies, the plans to make me look unstable and push me aside. Yes. I typed back one word. Yes. The reply came almost instantly. Once this is out, there's no going back. I exhaled slowly. I'm not going back. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was the truth demanding to be heard. A few hours later, my phone started ringing non-stop. Unknown numbers. Missed calls. Messages stacked on messages. I ignored all of them. Then one call came through that I couldn't ignore. My husband. I stared at his name on the screen until it stopped ringing. Then he called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "Please," he said the moment I picked up. His voice was raw. Broken. "We need to talk." "We already did," I replied calmly. "No," he said desperately. This will destroy everything. My job. My name. My family." I laughed softly. "You should have thought about that before destroying me." "People are asking questions," he said. "Things are moving too fast." "Good," I replied. "They should." There was silence on the line. Then his voice dropped. "I loved you," he said. "That lie didn't hurt anymore." "You loved what I gave you," I said. "Not me." I hung up. Minutes later, another call came in. My best friend. I hesitated, then answered. "I'm begging you," she cried. "Please stop this. I can't breathe. Everyone knows something is wrong." "You didn't struggle to breathe when you were betraying me," I replied. "I was confused," she sobbed. "I didn't think it would end like this." "You didn't think about the ending at all," I said quietly. "You only cared about the moment." She lowered her voice. "If you do this, you'll hurt more people than just us." I closed my eyes. "That's not my fault," I said. "The truth doesn't create damage. It reveals it." I ended the call. Within the hour, it began. Emails sent. Files uploaded. Messages forwarded. Every piece of proof I had carefully gathered was released. Slowly, deliberately, like drops of rain before a storm. Then the storm hit. My phone exploded with notifications. Friends. Family. Co-workers. Some asking questions. Some apologizing. Some begging me to stop. Social media filled with whispers. Screenshots. Shock. My husband's name started appearing in places he never wanted it to be. My best friend's perfect image cracked in front of everyone. And then something happened that even I hadn't fully prepared for. Someone else came forward. Then another. And another. Stories poured out. Similar lies. Similar patterns. Different victims. I sat there, stunned. This was bigger than me. Much bigger. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Thank you." I thought I was alone. My hands trembled. Then another. "He did the same thing to me." And another. She knew. She always knew. I covered my mouth, fighting back tears. All this time, I thought I was the only one being played. I wasn't. By evening, the world around them was collapsing. My husband's workplace released a statement. My best friend disappeared from every platform she once ruled. And still, it wasn't over. Just as the sun began to set, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized immediately. I answered without speaking. "You've started something you can't control," the voice said. I sat up straight. "Good," I replied. "Neither could you." There was a pause. "Meet me," the voice continued. "Tonight." I hesitated. "Why?" I asked. "Because if what you released is real," they said, "then there's more. Much more. And it involves people far above them." My heart began to race. "Where?" I asked. An address was sent. I stared at it, my mind spinning. I had wanted justice. But this was something else entirely. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, knowing deep down that once I walked into that place, there would be no turning back. And I had a terrifying feeling. The worst betrayal of all hadn't even been revealed yet. The address led me to a quiet building far from the noise of the city. No signs. No lights outside. Just silence. I sat in my car for a long moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my heart beating faster with every second. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. I had already exposed enough. I had already burned bridges I could never rebuild. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew I had come too far to stop now. I stepped out of the car. The door to the building opened before I could knock. "Come in," a voice said from inside. I walked into a small room with plain walls and a single table. Someone was already sitting there. They didn't smile. They didn't look surprised to see me. "You're braver than most," they said. "I didn't come here to be brave," I replied. "I came for the truth." They nodded slowly. "Then sit." I sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then they slid a thick envelope across the table toward me. "You think this started with your husband and your friend," they said. It didn't. I opened the envelope. Inside were names, dates, photos, messages. Too many. My breath caught. This is a network." "Yes," they replied. "A circle of people who protected each other, covered each other, used silence as a weapon." My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. "And my husband?" I asked quietly. "He wasn't the leader," they said. "Just a participant. A useful one." The words made my stomach turn. "And my best friend? She knew more than she ever told you." I closed my eyes. The person across from me leaned forward. "What you released today cracked the surface. But if this comes out, it won't just ruin reputations. It will end careers, families, legacies." I looked up. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you're already the face of it," they said. "And because once people start talking, they don't stop." I shook my head slowly. "This is too big." They smiled sadly. "That's what everyone says, right before they realize silence costs more." I thought of the messages I had received. The strangers thanking me. The ones who had suffered quietly for years. "How many people know about this?" I asked. "Enough to be afraid," they replied. "Not enough to feel safe." I swallowed hard. "If this gets out, they'll come after me." "They already are," the person said calmly. My phone buzzed on the table. A new message. "You need to stop. Now." My blood ran cold. "Who sent that?" I asked. "They noticed you left," the person replied. "And they don't like losing control." I stood up. "Then why meet me here?" "Because you needed to see what you're really dealing with," they said. "And because you have a choice." "What choice?" I asked bitterly. "Walk away," they said. "Disappear. Or finish what you started." I stared at the envelope again. "Once this goes public," they continued, "you won't just be a betrayed wife. You'll be a threat." I thought of my old life. The quiet dinners. The fake smiles. The woman who believed love was enough. She was gone. "I won't disappear," I said finally. The person nodded. "I hoped you'd say that." They reached into their pocket and placed a small device on the table. "What's this?" I asked. "A backup," they said. "Everything you saw, stored, protected. If anything happens to you, it releases automatically." My heart pounded. "You planned this?" "Yes," they replied. "Because truth needs insurance." I took the device. As I stood to leave, they spoke again. "One more thing," they said. "The people you exposed tonight? They're already turning on each other." I paused. "Including my husband?" The person met my eyes. "Especially him." I left the building feeling heavier than when I arrived. When I got back to my car, my phone rang. "My husband." I answered. "You ruined everything," he shouted. "They're questioning me. They're saying my name is all over this." I stayed calm. "Tell the truth," I said. "It might save you." "There are others," he snapped. "People you don't want to mess with." "I already am," I replied. There was a long silence. Then he whispered, "They said if I don't talk, you'll pay." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the dark road ahead. For the first time since this began, fear crept into my chest, not for myself, but for what they might do next. Because now I knew something terrifying. The people I was exposing were desperate. And desperate people don't play fair. As I drove away, another message appeared on my phone. "We know where you are." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I didn't drive home. The moment that message appeared, "We know where you are," I understood something very clearly. Home was no longer safe. I drove past my street without slowing down, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. Every car behind me felt suspicious. Every red light felt like a trap. I checked my mirrors again and again. Nothing looked out of place. That scared me more than being followed. I pulled into a crowded place with bright lights and people everywhere. I parked far from the entrance and sat there, breathing slowly, forcing myself not to panic. Fear makes mistakes. And mistakes were something I could not afford. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "You should have stopped when you had the chance." I didn't reply. Instead, I turned my phone off. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly alone. I went inside and sat where I could see everything. Doors, windows, reflections. I ordered something I didn't eat and stayed there for hours, watching strangers live normal lives. Laughing. Talking. Existing without knowing how quickly everything could change. When it was late enough, I left through a different exit. I didn't go back to the car right away. I walked. Changed direction. Blended in. I had learned enough from watching people who thought they were untouchable. Eventually, I made my way to a place I knew I could trust. A small room. Quiet. Secure. I locked the door behind me and finally let myself sit down. My hands were shaking. I turned my phone back on. Dozens of missed calls. Messages. Voicemails. From my husband. From my best friend. From numbers I didn't recognize. And one message that made my blood run cold. "If you release one more file, you won't get a warning next time." I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. If they thought fear would stop me, they didn't know me at all. I logged into the secure folder. Everything was there. Every message. Every recording. Every name. I remembered the device the stranger had given me. The backup. The insurance. I wasn't alone anymore, even if it felt that way. As the night stretched on, something unexpected happened. Another message appeared. This one was different. "They're pressuring me to lie. I can't do it anymore." I froze. Then another message followed. "I'm ready to talk. But I'm scared." I typed back carefully. "You're not alone. And you're not the first." A few minutes passed. Then a reply. "Meet me. I have proof you don't." My heart raced. This was exactly how people got trapped. But it was also how the truth grew. "Where?" I typed. An address came through. Too familiar. Too close. My stomach twisted. I stared at the screen, weighing the risk. Every instinct screamed danger. But another voice, quiet but strong, reminded me why I started this. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth to survive. I sent one last message. "I'm not coming alone." No reply. I waited. Nothing. I shut the laptop and leaned back, exhausted. That's when I heard it. A sound. Soft. Too soft. A footstep outside the door. My body went completely still. Another sound. Closer. Someone was there. I reached for my phone silently, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. I held my breath, listening. A shadow passed under the door. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. "Open up," it said softly. "We need to talk." My blood ran cold. I recognized that voice. It was my best friend. And in that moment, I knew this was no accident. She hadn't come alone. I stepped back slowly, my mind racing. Because if I opened that door, everything could end right there. And if I didn't, they might force their way in. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, staring at the door as if it might suddenly disappear. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to open it. Please, the voice said again. I'm alone. I almost laughed. That was the oldest lie in the world. I walked quietly to the side of the door and pressed my ear against the wall. I listened carefully. I heard breathing. Not one set. Two. Slow. Controlled. My stomach twisted. You shouldn't be here, I said through the door, keeping my voice steady. I had no choice, she replied. Her tone cracked, and for a split second, it sounded real. They're watching me. They told me to come. That sentence chilled me more than any threat. Who is they? I asked. There was a pause. A long one. Please, she whispered. Just open the door. I need to explain. I closed my eyes. Once upon a time, I would have believed her. Once upon a time, I would have opened the door without hesitation, pulled her into my arms, and told her everything would be okay. That woman was gone. Step away from the door, I said quietly. I can't, she replied. They're right behind me. My phone vibrated in my hand. A message appeared on the screen. Do not open that door. My chest tightened. I typed back with shaking fingers. She's here. The reply came instantly. We know. This is a setup. The handle on the door moved slightly. I stepped back, my pulse roaring in my ears. Listen to me, she said urgently. They told me if I don't get you to come with me, they'll release things about you. Lies. Dangerous lies. I laughed softly, even as fear crawled up my spine. They already tried that, I said. It didn't work. Her voice hardened. Don't be stupid, she snapped. You think you're winning? You're just a pawn. There it was. The mask slipping. I took another step back. You chose your side, I said. Now live with it. The door shook suddenly, harder this time. My heart nearly stopped. Open it, a deeper voice said from outside. A man's voice. Cold. Commanding. I didn't answer. I moved quickly to the desk, grabbed my laptop, and opened it. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I accessed the secure folder. I hovered over the release button. If I pressed it, everything would go out. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. My phone buzzed again. If they try to force entry, release everything. Another bang hit the door. Louder. The frame rattled. Last chance, the man said. Come with us quietly, and this ends peacefully. I felt something settle inside me. Peacefully. They had never wanted peace. They wanted silence. I pressed the button. Files scheduled for immediate release. The banging stopped. Silence filled the hallway. I held my breath. Then footsteps. Fast. Retreating. I sank into the chair, my body shaking, tears finally spilling down my face. I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall. Minutes passed. Then my phone exploded with notifications. Messages flooding in. Alerts. Emails. It had begun. Everything I had been holding back was now out in the open. Names. Evidence. Patterns. Connections. No more control. No more hiding. My phone rang. I answered without looking. What did you do? My husband's voice screamed. They're panicking. People are turning on each other. I closed my eyes. I told the truth, I said. You've destroyed lives, he shouted. No, I replied calmly. I exposed lies. You don't understand, he said, his voice dropping. They're not going to let this go. I leaned back in the chair. Neither am I said. The call ended. I sat there in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by the weight of what I had just done. I knew there would be consequences. I knew this wasn't over. But for the first time since I walked into that room and saw everything collapse, I felt free. Then my laptop screen refreshed. A new file appeared. One I hadn't uploaded. My breath caught. The file name was simple. Final statement. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a message. Short. Direct. Terrifying. You forced our hand. Now you'll hear the truth about yourself. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. Because whatever was coming next wasn't about my husband. It wasn't about my best friend. It was about me. I stared at the screen for a long time. The words didn't move, but they felt alive. Final statement. My finger hovered over the mouse. My heart was beating so hard it felt like my chest might split open. After everything I had exposed, after everything I had survived, this was the moment that scared me the most. Not because of them. Because of what they might say about me. I clicked the file. The screen went white for a second. Then the text appeared. You were never supposed to see this. But since you chose war, here is the truth. I swallowed hard and kept reading. They didn't accuse me of crimes. They didn't threaten me directly. They did something far worse. They tried to rewrite my story. They painted me as unstable, emotional, obsessive. They twisted my pain into weakness and my silence into guilt. They claimed I imagined things, that I exaggerated, that I wanted attention. The same old trick. Gaslighting. Only this time, I was ready. Because right under their lies were attachments. And they didn't realize something important. They had exposed themselves. The file included internal messages, conversations where they discussed controlling narratives, silencing women, destroying credibility before the truth could fully surface. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was over. You lost, I whispered to the empty room. I saved everything. Then I did one final thing. I wrote my own statement. Not angry. Not emotional. Just clear. I told the truth. From the moment I walked into that room and saw my husband and my best friend together, to the threats, the pressure, the fear, and the lies meant to break me, I attached proof. Then I sent it. Everywhere. Press. Legal contacts. Independent investigators. People who had already reached out, waiting for one last confirmation that they weren't alone. Within hours, the response was overwhelming. Support poured in. Stories. Apologies from people who once doubted me. Messages from strangers who said, "Because of you, I finally spoke up." My husband tried calling. I didn't answer. My former best friend sent a long message full of regret. I didn't reply. Some bridges don't deserve rebuilding. Days later, everything became official. Investigations opened. Careers ended. Names fell from places they once ruled. And the people who thought they could scare me into silence were suddenly very quiet. As for me, I walked away. Not hiding. Not running. Healing. I moved into a small place filled with light. I slept through the night again. I laughed. Real laughter. For the first time in years. I learned something powerful. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. Silence does. I wasn't ruined by what I walked in on. I was reborn by what I did next. And if you're listening to this story right now, if you've ever been betrayed, gaslit, or made to feel small for telling the truth, remember this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. And you are not alone. Sometimes, the moment that breaks your heart is the moment that saves your life. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful, emotional story like this. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you've ever faced betrayal and found the strength to rise, your story might help someone else heal. Thank you for listening.